Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. And we are live in front of a studio audience. The second time ever that Peace, Love, Liberty Radio has been in front of a live studio audience. And yes, they are live. It's not a dead studio audience, because that would be just like no fun at all. Because, you know, audience participation, and dead people can't really participate all that well, depending on what sort of weird activity you're doing. But then it would not be consensual if you're doing things and nobody's consenting to it. But yes, live studio audience, and like I did on Monday, we're changing it up just a little bit because it is a live edition. So there's going to be a guest, and in the first segment, I've got Mandy Parsons. Mandy, this is actually your first PorcFest, but you are not new to the Liberty movement.
Exactly. Precisely.
So for people that might not be familiar with Mandy Parsons, give just a brief intro of yourself.
I'm a recovering Republican.
Okay, that was a little more brief than I expected from someone that used to do radio.
Yeah, I was going to continue after that.
Okay.
Anybody who listens to LRN probably heard me on the Corey Moore Show, if they listen to the Corey Moore Show. I've dabbled in a radio background, so I have a little bit of experience, done a few podcasts, and became friends with the super duper Darryl Perry, so here I am.
And you wanted to come on the show Monday, and I said, wait until you've been here for a couple of days, and then we can talk about all that is PorcFest, although we can't really talk about all that is PorcFest because there's absolutely no way we would fit it all in a 30-minute show. They can't fit it all into 21 hours of Free Talk Live broadcasting 3 hours a night. So what do you think so far? You know, we're halfway in. So what do you think so far?
In 3 days, I have been to an international country trying to see how I can cross borders with as little ID as possible. Where else are you going to do that with a group of fellow anarchists?
Well, you could go into Canada and try to cross a border into the U.S. They've got some libertarians in Canada.
They do, and we did that on the way back.
Can you actually get a little closer
Sure.
to the microphone instead of being like, you know, several inches away? That way the levels work out to be a lot better. So you went to Canada yesterday.
Yes.
And who went? What was the thing? You know, like tell me everything about going to Canada.
Okay, so you know that every website you go to, seeing what kind of identification, it's going to say you need a passport, you need a passport, you need a passport.
Yes.
So the whole idea of yesterday's mission was to see how little ID you could get by with crossing into Canada. And their rules are actually a lot more lax than the United States. So I got in on a driver's license.
Okay, but were you able to get back into the U.S. on that driver's license without much trouble?
Yes.
Well, you're here, but that does not mean you did not have trouble.
I got interrogated a little bit, but when I couldn't produce a birth certificate and said I never had a passport before, he was kind of just like, get out of my face. So I got to come back.
Okay, so now you're going to become president because, you know, our president, and I'm not going into the birther conspiracy, but, you know, there's that whole thing about, well, Barack Obama don't have a birth certificate, so therefore can you? And it's like, really, that's the thing that you're going to get all up in arms about? You know, not his foreign policy, not the fact that he drone bombs hundreds of thousands of people around the world. You're upset about a piece of paper signed by some government official. Really, that's what you're upset about?
I produced a Social Security card. He said it wasn't good enough. And then he asked me when my birth date was, and pretty much, what do you have in your hands? And we're like, food from the restaurant that's right around the corner from you in that other country. And he's just like, go. Just go.
So did you go into the library? For people that are not familiar with what border crossing, you went to Derby Line, Vermont.
Right. It is the last city on the border between Canada and the United States.
Well, it's not the last. It's in Vermont. Like, it's, you know.
It is in Vermont.
Right, in Vermont,
Yeah.
you know, like the farther north, but there are, you know, places in New Hampshire and Maine that are much further north.
Sure.
But Derby Line, I've seen videos and like documentary things about Derby Line, and it's a very interesting city where the community built up before they knew where the border was.
Yeah.
And the border it literally comes through the middle of town, like streets. They're not necessarily straight based on a grid if you're looking at the border, but they're straight the way they had them laid out. And so there's this weird intersection where the border goes through the middle of the intersection. There's the library. The border goes through the middle of the library. There's one door to go in, and I forget which side of the border it's on, but you have to cross the border to go there from one country. And if you come out of the library and you don't go back where you came from, then the feds will jump on you. But you can be in the library. You cross the border 75 times, and nobody cares.
The whole point of the trip, first of all, was to see if we could get into Canada. 4 out of 5 of us successfully made it over the border.
Let me guess. Well, first, of the people that showed up, I'm assuming everybody is okay with having their names revealed. Who were the 5 people that showed up?
The elusive Ian Freeman.
Right. He's the one that organized the thing.
Our friend Garrett Ian.
Garrett, okay.
A gentleman named Paul.
Okay.
And another man named Mehdi.
And you. Of those 5, Mehdi's Canadian, so I know that he had no problem going back to his home country. Those damn immigrants. I'm joking, by the way, for anybody that thinks I'm being serious. Garrett, I don't think he has a passport.
He does.
He does, okay. I don't know Paul. And Ian has that World Service Authority passport. I'm guessing Ian is the one that had issues.
He did. They wouldn't accept the passport, but they would have let him in on his license if he had had other complications.
Horrible, felon's not the right term. A deviant. He is a criminal in the eyes of the Canadian government because he's got obstruction of justice and contempt of court charges. And Canada doesn't let criminals into their country.
It was only 2 of his misdemeanors that kept him in because they were too recent. Had they had more time lapsed, he would have been okay.
Do you recall what those 2 were? I'm thinking the disorderly and obstruction, because he stood in front of a police car and they got him with, I think, obstructing justice or some sort of weird thing that's not... the thing that they charged him with does not sound like what they should have charged him with.
I don't know about that one. The one I did know about was the dual identification.
Oh, yes. Yeah, so that's actually a very long, funny story where he was going through a name change, getting his name legally changed from Ian Bernard to Ian Freeman.
Yes.
And he went to go get a driver's license after he got the paper from the court because the Department of Safety in New Hampshire said, we're going to suspend your license unless you do this. And he had a Florida driver's license, and they said, you have to get a New Hampshire driver's license. And so he went to get the New Hampshire driver's license with the name change paper, but he didn't have all the other documents changed over, and they said, you can't have that. And then he went back the next day as Ian Bernard, and they got him for unsworn falsifications, and then he got a driver's license back from Florida. That was the multiple IDs, and that was the problem. There's more when we come back on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
Coinbase is a simple and secure online Bitcoin wallet for sending, receiving, and storing Bitcoin. Coinbase also allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin using a bank account or use their tools to accept Bitcoin as a merchant. Opening a wallet is quick and easy, and for merchants, there are no transaction fees on the first $1 million worth of transactions. All of your funds on Coinbase are safe, with approximately 90% of customer funds being stored offline, and all wallets are stored using AES 256 encryption. To date, Coinbase has more than 1 million consumer wallets and is trusted by over 25,000 merchants, including Overstock.com, Khan Academy, Reddit, and of course, FPP. Get started at coinbase.fppradio.com. That's coinbase.fppradio.com. You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and Numery supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $3 per month or any amount of Bitcoin per month, thanks to the recurring payment options provided by Coinbase. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's FANS.fppradio.com.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. I've got Jim Babb from Philadelphia, one of the super activists down in Philly. You do a lot of stuff. We'll talk about some of that, and then there was something that you wanted to bring up about a William Penn reading of some sort that happened here at PorcFest. We'll talk about that in just a second, but first I've got to tell you about Survivor Max by Davy Barker. 11-year-old Max must survive the zombie apocalypse alone in New Hampshire. The slow-moving, non-thinking lame brains swarm his home searching for living flesh. Max must apply his Porcupine Freedom Scouts training to plan his escape, but first he must prove that he's too smart to die. Look for Survivor Max on Facebook and Amazon, or you can read Chapter 1 for free at survivormax.com. That's survivormax.com. Jim Babb, you do a lot of jury nullification outreach in Philly. You were also at the Ross Ulbricht trial. You wanted to do some jury nullification outreach during, I believe, the length of that trial, but you were there for about a day, I believe. So what I've not talked to you about this, so I want to get your thoughts. I've talked to some of the other activists that went down, specifically some of the ones that were holding signs like, 30 years in prison for running a website. So what are your thoughts on basically the family and the lawyer saying, activists, please go home because this might make things worse for Ross?
It was a really difficult decision because obviously when I do jury nullification pamphleting, I'm not taking instructions from any particular defendant. I'm there to help everybody in the courtroom.
Right.
In a place like 500 Pearl Street in southern Manhattan, this is a wholesale, soul-crushing machine that that is destroying countless people every day over there. So it was the effort was more than about any particular case. It's about trying to help everybody in that horrible pit of despair. But the last thing we want to do is make things worse on any particular defendant.
Right.
And the threat was laid out by Judge Catherine Forrest.
Forrest Grump. She basically did what, she was pretty smart as far as a thug goes. She said, you know what, I can't actually chase you away like I did Professor Julian Heiklund here, but since he battled us and won, we sort of have to try something different with you. And we're not going to chase you away, but what we are going to do is threaten the defendant. And we're not going to threaten you with criminal charges.
Right.
We're going to threaten the defendant and make the jury think that he's this horrible, horrible human that's trying to kill them.
Exactly. They said, well, you know what we can do? We can't do anything about you guys handing out pamphlets outside.
Or holding signs.
Right, or holding signs. But what we can do is we can bust the jury in from a secret, undisclosed location and bring them in through the Batcave entrance underneath. And no, we're not going to tell them it's to protect them from those evil signs and pamphlets. We're going to make them think that he's some kind of awful crime lord, and this is to protect them and their families and to help keep them anonymous.
Because one of the charges was what they call the kingpin charge, which is basically somebody running a crime ring. And they generally reserve that for, not Don Quixote. Who's the big mob boss? The Mafia Don.
Right. They really had, they were really painting him as this horrible monster that might try to kill them.
Right.
So
and they kept mentioning they being, the prosecution and the judge. And don't even get me started on the judge and the whole, I'm convinced that he tried to kill people. Even though, like, the prosecution kept saying, like, we've got these unfiled charges. Well, okay. Jim Babb, I've got an unfiled charge against you of theft by deception. I don't have any proof that it happened.
But let's just talk about
it.
And
I've never, gone to a prosecutor to have them put this, through the process of actually charging you. I'm just going to tell people that there are unfiled charges against Jim Babb.
Right, and that was used to deny him bail. It was used to just it really put a damper on support in the community. A lot of people were kind of like, yeah, I'd like to support him, but I don't know, murder for hire. And it actually did pull people off the front line that should have been supporting him had they known that these charges were complete BS. And now, who even knows who typed those chat logs where this was supposedly discussed? It could have been the actual investigators themselves, which are now under indictment themselves for being corrupt.
One of whom has said he will plead guilty to several of the charges, which means that he's most likely going to sing like a little bird, and he will not see jail time at all because federal agents hardly ever see jail time, especially when they plea.
So, I don't expect a lot of justice to be served there, but this judge, Catherine Albrecht, sentenced...
No, Catherine Forrest. Ross Albrecht is
Sorry, Catherine Albrecht. And, Catherine Forrest, Forrest Grump, as she shall be ever known. She sentenced him to this vicious
life in prison.
More than Charles Manson got.
Yeah.
Okay. You can rape and murder children. You can eat people. Okay. And you're not as dangerous to the state as a guy with a free market website.
Right. Because the only crime is disobeying the state. And that's the only crime.
Exactly. And when you do it really well, like Ross allegedly did, they really get their feelings hurt, and they really want to do something about that. And he was such a pioneer, such a leader in this field that unfortunately he's the one that's got all the arrows in his back. But the ideas that he's brought forward about having this free market that can leapfrog over these scrutinizers and these revenuers, the idea is out there. So they can hurt the man, but they can't do anything to the ideas that he's released on the world.
Yeah, and speaking of free market, you have a entrepreneur for a child. Last year, I only know of one of them that's being an entrepreneur. Last year, she drug you off to some convention and won a 3D printer, and then she started making 3D printed magnet. Like the actual magnet that sticks to things is not out of a 3D printer, but the things that are attached to the magnet, refrigerator magnet design. She 3D prints those, and apparently she's got a pretty good business going on for her.
So far, pretty good. And that's Dorothy, and she's 13 now. She started this last year. Violet, who's 9, has really embraced this as well. And this year we have tons more products available, improved the quality, improved everything. Violet has her own designs that are part of the collection now. She just completely loves it.
I noticed a bunch of 2 and 3 color designs this year, where last year was pretty much either black or yellow.
It's last year was 2 colors only, pretty much, but now we got 3, some 4 colors. There's a great selection of stuff. Violet has really impressed me. She's 9, but she's like, look, I need to have a cop block design. Like, I'm making it. This is what I want it to look like. This is the colors. This is the font. Like, she made it happen. So she's taken it's nice to see her step up and really take an interest too.
Can people at home order those magnets online?
TheFreedomFridge.com.
TheFreedomFridge.com. Get some 3D printed magnets from a very young entrepreneur learning about the free market. We'll be back in just a moment.
During the 2013 Porcupine Freedom Festival, Davy Barker presented an idea for a renegade psychological experiment. Since then, he has refined his idea and put his plan and research into writing. He explains, "We aim to show the world beyond a shadow of a doubt that power corrupts absolutely and corrupt authority deserves no obedience." Authoritarian Sociopathy is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. ExpressCoin is the best choice for buying Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dogecoin, and more. ExpressCoin prides themselves on their customer service, so much so that the back end on the website should allow them to be even more focused on your needs. Get your cryptocurrencies with money order, check, wire transfer, or cash deposit. Get started at expresscoin.fppradio.com. That's expresscoin.fppradio.com. You can support FPP Radio by shopping online. Whether you're looking for t-shirts, precious metals, bitcoins, or books, you'll find that and more at shop.fppradio.com. There's an Amazon shopping iframe built into the website, or you can shop directly from FPP with Bitcoin in the Bitcoin store. Every purchase you make from one of my affiliates at shop.fppradio.com helps fund FPP Radio. That's shop.fppradio.com.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. We will jump into the Ask Me Anything Rapid Fire, the second ever Rapid Fire Ask Me Anything in just a moment. How many questions do we have this today?
1, 2,
Two, three,
4 so far.
4. Okay, so it's not going to be as rapid as the Monday Rapid Fire, and I will be doing this again on Friday. So if you have questions, think of them between now and Friday. Get those submitted. I will try to answer as many questions as possible, and we'll get to those questions. But first, I need to tell you about Roberts & Roberts Brokerage. Since 1977, Roberts & Roberts has been a trusted source for buying and selling your investment-grade precious metals. They take Bitcoin for precious metal purchases and have permanently removed the minimum purchase amount for all orders paid in the digital currency. Call Roberts & Roberts Brokerage today for knowledgeable advice on investing and a forward-thinking approach to new technologies. 850-478-5270, or visit them online at rrbi.co. That's rrbi.co. And Susanna Nope is going to read some questions, but not before I embarrass her just a bit. It's Susanna's birthday, everybody. So the live studio audience, give a big round of applause to Susanna for celebrating, I think, her 29th birthday again.
Yes, it is my 29th birthday again.
Yes, I'm not going to say how many times it's been the 29th birthday, but it's been several years. Susanna, I told you I was going to embarrass you. Read the first question for me, please.
The first question is, why is Crosby such a cheapskate?
I think that question is in reference to the owner of the campground, and I don't know that he's a cheapskate. I have had limited interaction with him. I know that there have been issues in past years with plumbing, and there's 1,500 people that come to this event during this 1 week, and you're going to have issues. I don't really know any further how to answer that question. Next question, please.
Next question is, have you tried the raspberry lemonade made by Matthew Santana at Tent Site 50?
I have not tried the raspberry lemonade made by Matthew Santana at Tent Site 50. I did not know that there was any raspberry lemonade being sold. Now that I know, I'm probably still, sorry, Matt, if you're listening, I'm probably still not going to go to Tent Site 50 to purchase any raspberry lemonade.
I brought some with me. Would you like to try it?
Is that an official question?
Yes.
Sure.
Would you like to try it now or after the show?
Not on the air, because that
okay.
makes for horrible radio when there are pauses of, I'm going to drink a beverage now.
Okay, then.
Because only the people that see would know that I'm drinking a beverage. Anybody listening, like, they would not know what I'm doing. Like, I could just say, I'm going to smoke a joint right now and breathe very deeply, and nobody's going to know that I did not actually smoke a joint. And for full disclosure, I don't smoke. I ingest my cannabis. And that, you know what, I'm going to tell a story that I probably should not tell. And I've got time because there's only a couple more questions and there's several minutes left. So there was one of my favorite attorneys was at PorcFest. And yes, I know that sounds ridiculous that an attorney was at PorcFest or that he would be one of my favorite attorneys. But he was here. And I'm not going to say who the attorney is, but one of my favorite attorneys. And he asked me, like, he was not wearing a suit, so anything he told me, he was like, anything I say here is officially off the record. And I was like, yeah, you're not in a suit. Anything that a lawyer says when he's not in a suit is never on the record. And so, like, he had a couple beers, and he asked me if I knew where to get some cannabis. And I was like, smokable or ingestible? He was like, I've never had ingestible. I said, well, hold on. And found a tincture from somewhere nearby and drizzled it on a cookie for him, and he ate it, and he was like, wow, you can really taste it. And then he went drinking his beers again, and I did not see him again. So I'm guessing he enjoyed it. Like, his car was gone from where it was parked the next morning, so, I'm guessing he slept and was good and left and everything's cool. So like
survived to tell the tale.
At least I survived. I'm sure I will speak to him coming up fairly soon to find out about a hearing that I'm interested in. So the next question.
Okay, the next one is again PorcFest related.
PorcFest related. Okay.
How many people could a porcupine poke if a porcupine comes to PorcFest? And I actually told the person that submitted this question she should probably ask Tony that question.
Well, it depends. Again, are you talking about a human porcupine or the little furry creature? If you're talking about the little furry creature, I would need to do more research to find out the average number of quills that a porcupine has, how fast those quills grow back after they, do their thing and shoot them out in fear. I don't know how the ejection out of the body of a quill works. Again, these are only moderately PorcFest related because of the word porcupine. So as far as if it's the human porcupine, how it depends on recovery time and were little blue pills being taken to help, and how many consensual people were involved at any given time. I don't know how to answer this question. I'm guessing this came from a math teacher, so I will tell the teacher I don't have all of the information required for me to answer your word problem. I'm sorry. What's the next question?
Okay, the last question that has been submitted, but there's still people in the studio audience if you'd like to
I don't
submit
think
more.
there's going to be time for more submissions. I can, drag this out for a while.
Maybe. What is the nature of the universe?
What is the nature? I don't even understand that question. That's like asking me, what is the color of white? It's a question that doesn't even make sense, because the universe is part of nature. Nature is part of the universe. Maybe I'm oversimplifying the question. Could the person that asked this question come up and reword it in a different manner? And how is this either PorcFest or philosophy related would be my question to that person. And I come on up, Jim. The look on your face tells me you asked the question. Can you rephrase?
The question is very clear, and it is obviously philosophy related, and it's open-ended. What is the nature of the universe? What is this thing we call the universe, and what is its nature? How does it work? Why is it here? It's open-ended.
No, those are not philosophy. Those are what's that weird term that I can't think of off the top of my head? Like those are metaphysical questions, not philosophy questions. So that question was invalid, and we are out of time anyway. So I will leave you to ponder this question. What is the color of white? Of course it's white, and the nature of the universe is the universe, and nature, it's all the same.